Every time something related to the Northeast is being projected, and you try to say that there's a disaster or there's a big crisis that is going on in the Northeast, it feels like you're just barking up the wrong tree all the time. It's not just about Sikkim. And we've seen what happened in Manipur very recently. You feel that you've been discarded into a position where you're no longer wanted when the times are really tough for you. Tragedies like this, or for that matter, tragedies like the way we had in Manipur, these are opportunities I feel for the larger public to show a very strong connect towards the region.
If you have landed in this video, you already know who our guest is. Today we have with us Karma Takapa, who was seen in the role of Sub Inspector Surinder Singh alongside Kareena Kapoor Khan, Jaideep Ahlawat, Vijay Verma, Saurabh Sachdeva, and Leela Shram, among several others, in Sujoy Ghosh's Janeja, which released in September 21 and is streaming on Netflix. Karma, welcome to East Mojo, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Kalyan, for having me.
Karma, I personally love Janeja, and I'm certain that working with Sujoy Ghosh, Kareena Kapoor, Jaideep Ahlawat, and Vijay Marwa must have been fun. But before we talk about the movie, I would like to discuss your home state, which is battling a huge crisis right now. What was your first reaction when you saw the first visuals of the devastation?
I mean, I think like any other person, because I'm so strongly connected, because it's my home state, I think the first reaction is also of fear and worry, and you're constantly trying to find out if the people that your family and your relatives and your friends are all safe and are doing good. So I think that is initially the first reaction, and I guess slowly the reaction turns into a sort of how should I put it? It turns into one of heartbreak once you start seeing everything that has been happening, and in the way things have been unfolding over a period of time. It's sort of a mixed emotion, actually. I mean, on one hand, you feel as a state, because you're so insignificant and you're left out in the larger machinery of the country, and then you see the amount of attention that you don't get from the larger mainstream, and then on the other hand, you see the local people who are working so hard and just trying to put things together. So I think in one way, it's amazing that the people within the state just come together and just make things happen on their own. And on the other hand, it's really sad and heartbreaking to see, not for the first time, but for now, I don't know, every other time that something of this sort happens in this region, that you feel a complete lack of support from the larger mainstream. And that's quite disheartening, actually.
By what you said, it was left out and did not get the amount of attention it should have gotten. Sikkim, do you think the center or those who are in bar in New Delhi did not do enough for Sikkim?
I think it's not for me to say. I think I think these things are very obvious and pretty clear as to what happens in terms of how quickly the response happens, how much of concern is there, how much of attention that it gets in the national media, how many people are talking about it, all of these things put together. And it's not just about Sikkim. And we've seen what happened in Manipur very recently, and the amount of time it took to basically for the center to actually take attention of things like these. Not just the center, but also the larger public, the media, the way they control the information about the way the information comes out from the place. All of these things. And I think all of these things put together puts people like us who are from the region into a space where we feel completely left out from the larger system. I think, when you have tragedies like this, or for that matter, tragedies like the way we had in Manipur, and these are opportunities I feel for the larger public to or show a very strong connect towards the region. And I feel that a lot of people are just letting go of that connect and not taking advantage of the situation where they should actually be, like pushing the agenda, talking about it, that they can, whether it's through donations or whether it's by sharing things or just by creating a larger information about what's happening in the place. I think a lot of people just look at these places as their holiday homes and vacation homes. And they come there, they have a vacation, and all these people, and I mean, like Sikkim roughly gets around about 15 lakh tourists in a year. And you realize that when tragedy of this magnitude hits a place like Sikkim, you realize that there's not even an iota of that population that comes into the state as tourists who actually speak about the situation. They will talk about the beauty and they'll talk about how beautiful it is and how nice the people are. But at the end of the day, when it matters and when it actually requires you to speak about the place or give larger information about the place, about the tragedy, show some empathy, show some at least understanding about what is happening, that is not happening. And that is, I think that is much more heartbreaking when you see it. You feel that you've been discarded into a position where you're no longer wanted when the times are really tough for you.
Exactly. So, to our viewers, we've also mentioned during our coverage of Sikkim devastation, there has been a lot of times when we have pointed out the amount of destructions that the dams may create, and rather than speaking about the beauty of the place and the tourist, how a lot of tourists are attracted to these places, there are also challenges that comes with such terrain and all the developmental projects that are carried out. Do you think that the climate aspect is not properly looked at when it comes to introducing any developmental project?
I think that's if anybody's been to Sikkim at this point of time, I think it's pretty apparent that the climate issues has been put in a back burner as of now. I mean, this tragedy is a classic example of one of those things happening. And we are constantly on a rush and a fight to try and super develop ourselves to a point where we are completely leaving behind the sentiments of people who are actually from the space, who are actually being first-hand affected by all the so-called developmental projects that everybody is harping about. And I think it's about time that the voices of the people who are the first-hand people who actually are on the ground and who are in positions which they get largely affected on the first hand, their voices are the ones that need to be heard first. Their opinions have to be taken with these things. If they don't want something, they don't want something. Like the dams have been protested forever now. The Lepchas have been protesting about the dams since the time the idea of the dams came about. And we as a larger society in Sikkim also have to be more vocal about these things that our Lepcha brothers and sisters who are based out of the north, who have been protesting about this for a very long time now, and we have to give them an ear, and we have to understand that this is something that they are speaking for our own good. And we also have to put a cap on what we mean by development. And we constantly hear the idea of sustainable development and what it means. I think it's time for us to seriously look at the possibilities of how we look at sustainable development and what does development actually mean for us. And do we actually need these kind of larger development processes? And or is it more important than the humans that actually exist within these spaces? And we all know the reason why these things are done. I mean, in the garb of development, there's a lot of things that goes on with projects like these, and we are all very aware about what those projects are, and we can see the amount of destruction that has happened because of that.
So, Karma, like you said, I think a lot of our viewers would also agree, and people who are watching this interview would also agree that the concept of development, especially when it comes to the northeastern region, and depending on the kind of geography and demography that we have, needs to change. The normal idea of development is tall buildings, skyscrapers, and huge bridges. So these things need to be relooked, and a lot of things need to be taken under consideration when it comes to developing or initiating any kind of project at all.
The question is about you have to look at the space that you're developing at the end of the day. You can't develop beyond what the capacity of a space is. And given the kind of terrain that we live in, the ecology that we live in, the environment that we have to hopefully keep for our generations to come, we have to take all of those things into consideration. Not every space is created such that you build skyscrapers on it or you do large scale constructions on it. You have to accept that reality, and you have to find ways of developing beyond just looking at the most obvious way of development that you look at, which is like building high skyscrapers or whatever you want to call it, a vertical development or however you want to look at it. I think the question is about whether you are able to create so-called a sense of development even without trying to get involved with large-scale construction. I think development also is a very strong concept vis-a-vis the economy. And like when we look at it, this dam per se, it's not really economically beneficial for the state. It's in a huge debt right now because of the construction of the dams. The amount of electricity that it generates is probably going to go into some other company that does not even function out of Sikkim. So, I mean, there are a lot of issues with the kind of development model that specifically, and I can talk specifically for Sikkim, I think there's a lot of issues with the development model that we have chosen to accept as us, and we are trying to fit our environment, our world into a development model and in other places, which at some point may be able to sustain it much longer than a place like Sikkim. And we also have to take that aspect of it under consideration, I think.
Karma, one thing that has been common throughout our coverage of the devastation in Sikkim is that we saw that it was locals who were actively involved in rescue operations, in fact, providing relief to those who were stranded. In fact, the first responders when the flood first hit northern Sikkim were locals trying to save their neighbors or tourists. What do you have to say about this?
I mean, I'm not surprised by it, to be very honest, because I come from the place and I know that people react with a much more stronger community feeling because we come from a smaller place. We have lesser number of people and we have a stronger bond towards each other. And disaster, that is when the bond towards each other is felt much more strongly. I don't think the issue was ever about whether people within the state will help each other or will help the tourists over there or not. That's never been the issue. But it's a larger amplification about the conversation about what the state is going through is what is required and what was always been required. People within the state exist within their own environments and they'll do their best to do what they can do at that point of time to get over this disaster, whatever's happened. The people outside are the ones who need to be able to amplify the conversations, have larger understanding about what is happening in the state, and also not just pay lip service, but to actively follow up on what is happening with this. Like, I meet a lot of people who, because I'm constantly living outside Sikkim, so I meet a lot of people who constantly ask me about Sikkim or show me concerns about how neglected I wouldn't say neglected in a larger sense, but neglected in very specific senses. How we feel distant from the larger mainstream and things like that. But these are the opportunities when the larger so-called educated intelligentsia of this country need to put the words forward in order for you to feel more included. When you are left out of the larger conversations, even when such large disasters happen in a state, it does not allow you to be integrated into the mainstream very easily. The constant battle with the Northeast has always been about trying to integrate them into the larger mainstream of the country. And these events are opportunities for the larger public that exists in the mainstream or outside the state or within different parts of the country to engage with the state, to make the people of the state feel like they're cared for, they're heard, they're understood, and that their words are being reached out, and that they're being prayed for, that they're being looked after, they're being thought about, all of these things, in whatever little way you can. But the problem is that these are the moments when people just turn a blind eye to it. Like most people don't even know what has happened. Or for that matter, it's now it's 7 days now since the time we've been talking. What is the larger conversation that we're having about it? Nothing. There is no. It feels like a futile exercise every time something related to the Northeast is being projected, and you try to say that there's a disaster or there's a big crisis that is going on in the Northeast. It feels like you're just barking up the wrong tree all the time, and you're constantly trying to make people aware, whereas they should be the ones who should constantly be engaging with the space. And I'm talking especially about people who are so-called educated, so-called intelligent people of the country who have got opinions about everything and everything. I think every person who's asked me about Sikkim or who's inquired about Sikkim that I want to visit it, I think these are the people who need to turn up now and show some level of support, some level of amplification of their voices, and to be at least able to project the issues that are happening within the state, what the disaster is, why it has happened, what is the cause of it, why are we bearing a brunt of a situation of development like we were talking about earlier that we possibly didn't need at some point.
Okay. Okay. Karma, now I would like to shift the focus on your latest release, Janeja. The film was
Okay.
shot in Kalimpong. So, can you share some of the experiences of shooting Janeja?
I think it was a very professional setup in the way we shot. I think it was the way we went about it was very organized. I think there weren't any issues vis-a-vis, despite having stars in the film. There weren't issues with anything. I didn't face any of this sort. I think everybody was very professional in the way they went about doing what they did. And yeah, I don't know what to say actually, to be very honest. Like, to be very honest, my mind is so wrapped up with what's happening in Sikkim that like I've forgotten about this film that has come out. To be very honest, so it's kind of hard for me to actually break it down as of now as to what the film how we did it. I mean, it was like any other shooting process, to be very honest with you. Like it was dealt with professionalism. It had stars like Kareena and amazing actors like Jaideep and Vijay who literally pulled and of course Sujoyda was the one who directed it, Avigda who shot it. So it was I mean the reason why I said okay to do a film like that was because of the fact that it had such an amazing cast and the director was amazing. So I knew that at the end of the day, we'll probably pull through with a very good film. I think that was what I hoped for, and hopefully that's what happened for most of the people who watched it, actually.
Okay, Karma, one positive change that we are witnessing, and we've been witnessing for the past couple of years, is that uh, earlier we used to see films that were mostly focused on northern India or the cultures of northern and the rest of India. Now we are seeing a gradual shift towards northeast. Uh, so, as an artist, I think it must be very important for you, and it's opening a lot of avenues for artists from this region since we are getting a lot of focus, in fact, not just from the mainland, but also international focus as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the shift was due,
Mhm.
and it's like any other shift that keeps happening in every other sector. Like you exhaust one section and then you move to the next section, and I think the shift is gradual. To be for a lack of a better word, it's very gradual. Actually, it's been taking forever, and we constantly, every time you see a character or every time you see a film that's based out of the northeast, then you start thinking, oh, you know what, everything's shifting towards that side. But I mean, it takes time,
Mhm.
and it's and that is exactly why the issues of what I was talking about, people amplifying the northeast or trying to integrate northeast into India, has a larger resonance to things like these. You know, you want people to accept to finance them, and one of the most integral factor of that northeast has to feel like an integral part of the country. People have to view that the larger population of the country has to view northeast as one of their own, so that they can watch cinema that comes out of it, comes local cinema that comes out of northeast, also watch movies or watch movies in large numbers when it is shot in northeast. It has to come from there. Everything is connected. I mean, like you can't just isolate the aspect of just northeast representation in movies to northeast representation in the mainstream of this country, in the larger socio-economical realities of the country. So I think everything is connected together. Like you can't suddenly have more people from northeast making movies in Bombay or the rest of the country and not have a larger representation or not have northeast being represented or understood on the larger sense by the rest of the country. You have to
Right.
understand the space, you have to understand the people that come out of it, and that in turn will bring about you incorporating more of those people within the industry of these films that we are talking about.
Okay. Karma, any specific moment that you remember from shooting Janeja that will stay with you for a long time?
I mean, I remember Jaideep's performances, to be very honest. I remember what Jaideep was doing, which I think on set it was amazing. Like, and I knew it from. I think everybody on set was quite very. Everybody knew it that he's what he's doing is amazing. I mean, like how he's being what he's being, and I remember there was a scene in there is a scene in while we are doing the interrogation scene, and it was me, Vijay, and Jaideep in the scene. And in that entire scene, I just had this one line that I had to say out of beyond which Jaideep has to continue his dialogue forward. And this is like, I don't know, like a 4, 5, 6 pager scene, which with a lot of dialogues in it. And Vijay, who is also a very good actor, who was like, I don't need to talk about these guys as how good an actors they are. So Vijay and Jaideep were going at it, and I was sitting next to them, and at some point, I'm supposed to say that one line. And after a few takes, I was just looking at Jaideep. It's like, I mean, he's really, really like doing what he needs to do, and he's getting it on the money, you know. And I, at some point, got lost, and I didn't end up actually saying the line. And the scene went on, and everything stops. And the next moment, I see Jaideep turning towards me, and he's like, "Bhai, tu line to bol de." and then suddenly it just suddenly struck me, and I felt so bad about it because it's such a long scene and you have to remember such long lines. And in the middle, I was completely lost for a moment over there as to what was happening. So yeah, that was an interesting moment. And beyond that, I mean, we had a lot of small moments that we kept sharing because see, Jaideep and Vijay both are from the Film Institute, and that is where I am from also. So there is some level of understanding or some level of camaraderie. It's not like we're thick of friends or anything like that, but there's some level of camaraderie because of where we come from and what we understand vis-a-vis these things. So I think that was good. And yeah, I mean, like I had a great time shooting the film, to be very honest. There was, I mean, I can't pick out moments probably right now, but yeah, we did what we did.
Great. Karma, we are running, unfortunately, we're running short of time. I would like to add one more question. What are the projects that you're currently working on? Can you please share something about?
Yeah, I mean, like currently as I'm putting together a docu-series which is based out of Sikkim. And again, it's one of those things. Again, like it brings me back to the larger conversation because it's so hard to pitch a documentary or pitch any film for that matter that comes out of the place. And you're constantly, and I've been trying to put this film together now for almost a year now. And you constantly are jostling or trying to meet different people and to be very honest, nobody wants to work on a film that talks about the space and the area of those people and things like that. So, I mean, it is a bit disheartening vis-a-vis being a filmmaker at those sense, but of course, that is what the reality of the situation is. So you can't much harp about it. As far as acting projects are concerned, I'm not doing anything as of now. I've got a few things that have been offered to me, and I've been looking for something that will have possibly be a little more substantial in terms of what the character is. Doesn't have, and also that you are trying to negate a very thin line between working towards a larger stereotype that has been constructed for people from the region, and also trying to work towards working with characters that are more interesting. But you feel like you're constantly being slotted into a stereotype and you're being expected to fill the space of a stereotype. So I think that is a constant challenge, and as far as acting is concerned, at least, yeah. And I think that is a challenge. I think any actor from the Northeast in Bombay right now feels.
Yes, of course. Karma, I really had a bunch of questions that I would have loved to ask you, but unfortunately, we are running short of time. But
some other time, maybe.
Yes, of course. We'll be looking forward to it. But anyway, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing all those inputs and all the experience that you had from Janeja and the inputs regarding Sikkim. Thank you so much for joining us. For our viewers, if you like our content, do share and subscribe to East Mojo on all the social media platforms. And if you want to support independent and unbiased journalism, visit our website eastmojo.com, and on the homepage itself you'll find the subscribe option and you can choose the plan of your choice. Thank you for watching. I'm Kalyan Dev from East Mojo.
Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to East Mojo. For any queries, put them down in the comments section below and press on the bell icon for notifications.